first instance. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Todd McClay.
Thank you. As the Member of Parliament for Rotorua, of which Kawarau, the river and the mills that Mrs Delahunty, the mover of this bill, has mentioned, fall in my electorate, I felt duty bound to stand and speak on this issue. Can I start by saying to the people of Kawarau, I know how very much they rely upon the mill and what an important part of their life it is. Now, having said that, I want to make a few comments about the importance of this mill to Kawarau, to the wider Bay of Plenty, and then some of the challenges we face around the environment, and why I believe, as the Honourable Nick Smith said earlier, that the very best place to have this debate and look to make changes to legislation would be in a wider reform of the RMA, as opposed to singling out in a piece of legislation like this one river, one mill, one area. I think that there are some things we need to talk about without doubt, but a review of the wider RMA reform is the best place for that. Mr Speaker, the mills in Kawarau have a greater deal of history. Indeed, without them, the town of Kawarau wouldn't exist. It's probably fair to say that if you were to build mills of that size today, you wouldn't build them on a river the size of the one in question. Nevertheless, that was done many years ago when we didn't have the same focus on the environment as we importantly have today. The Carter Holt Harvey Pulp and Paper Mill directly employs 210 people and approximately 140 dedicated on-site contracting staff on top of that. It produces 290,000 tonnes of market kraft paper per year. 40% of that is exported to Asia, 30% to Australia, 30% is used domestically. It is chemical pulp exports for New Zealand in the year ending 2009 were valued at about $450 million. 39% of this was derived from the Tasman mill, a value of about $176 million in exports for New Zealand. They also sell locally in New Zealand, so therefore the value of the work of this mill to New Zealand and the local economy is about $260 million. Now, there are two mills there. There's also Norski Skog, and they share the consent that Mrs Delahunty has mentioned. Collectively, they directly employ 830 people and contractors, and they're responsible for effectively creating an additional 3,500 jobs in the wider Bay of Plenty economy. They contribute about $890 million of indirect impacts, $169 million to household incomes in the Bay of Plenty, and they contribute $1.5 billion to the New Zealand economy, $306 million to New Zealand households, worth 7,345 full-time equivalent jobs. Now, the challenge that we have around this resource consent that was issued a couple of years ago was the owners of the mill needed to upgrade it. They needed to upgrade it for a number of reasons, including the environmental impact that it was having in its current state. And they needed to invest $60 million on a new boiler and other facilities there. Now, in the case that they went for a resource consent, and our regional council at the time looked at this, there was an understanding that without this investment, the mill would not be able to continue in the function it was, that many of those jobs would be lost. At the same time, there was recognition of the challenges we face in the environment. So I think our regional council did a very good job in balancing some of the concerns of the community, the needs of the environment, against the need for investment on a plant that is of absolute importance to the Bay of Plenty and to much of my electorate. And so they were faced with a difficulty there, Mr Speaker. Indeed, the resource consent was issued. It was challenged and went to the Environment Court, and I think that the process did work as it was intended when the law was originally written and put in place. So all parties had an opportunity to have their say. Since then, the companies concerned have entered into agreements, contracts with local iwi to provide assistance and funding to make sure that the waterways are kept as clean as they can be. Now, what I want to do in the moment I have left is just say, Mr Speaker, that one of the conditions of the consent was the company needed to continue to reduce the pollution that might have been put into the river. Indeed, if we look at 2004 compared to today, there's only 30% of what's been put into the river there today compared to that period of time. At the end of this consent period, there will be 1/8 of the amount going to the river that was the case before. So, Mr Speaker, I would say to you that they are good corporate citizens. They do have the environment at heart. They work closely with the community. We won't be supporting this bill, although I do think a debate is important when it comes to the wider RMA reforms. But to the people of Kawerau, who I know support the bill and the work they do, to the Council and others there, it's very important if this does go to committee that they have the opportunity to have their say. Thank you.
Order. Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Mr Speaker, I want to begin